Hey guys, it's Jonathan here, and I just ran across something that's actually kind of common, so I decided I wanted to shoot a quick video and talk to you about it. And basically, it's about knowing the true value of a property and then the subsequent taxes that come from it. So, the bottom line is with vacant land, that the taxes should be relatively low compared to other properties that are out there. Most of the taxation that's done is based on improvement. So vacant land, even if it's a high value piece, should have relatively low taxes. But the key word in that sentence is should. Doesn't always work that way. So I've had many properties that are assessed around $10,000, and then their annual tax bills are only $100, $200, $500, something like that. Usually not more than 4 or 500. But I've also seen properties that are worth $10,000 that have tax bills of $2,000. So, how's that even possible, right? Well, the reality is that it usually comes down to two things. One is very easy to overcome, and that is that the value is just based off of some old assessment. It was never updated. Um, I actually remember one of the first land deals that I did. The property was assessed at about $50,000, and it had a $1,500 tax bill. So not too bad, right? Well, the problem was that the market value had shifted dramatically in that area, and that property was now worth somewhere in the $10,000 range, a little bit more than that, probably about 15. I think we sold it for 13, so about $15,000. So during the boom of Florida, this was in Florida in 2005, the value soared. And many years later now, I think we're in like 2012 with this deal, the property appraiser hadn't adjusted those values yet. So that was easy to overcome, right? We just had to petition them and they would do an adjustment. Now, we did that because we actually purchased that property. So in that case, we didn't want to have a $2,000 tax bill, right? We wanted to bring it down. So we actually petitioned them and they revalued it and it brought it down. Now, if you're going to just flip the property and you're not planning on holding it, then it's not really anything to worry about. But if it's money coming out of your pocket, it's something you would want to look at. The second situation is possible, but it's not easy to overcome, at least not always. And that's when the taxes include some sort of special assessment. One very common example that I've run into, and by very common, I mean more common than other special assessments. It's still not very common at all. We don't run into it hardly at all, but out of special assessments, it's probably the most common, and that is called a paving assessment. And what they do is they pave a road and then they charge every property a flat rate for this. And what that's done is it's added to whatever the tax bill is, that normal tax bill for a number of years. So what may happen is it may be a $10,000 piece of property, right? But it may be $6,000 to pave that stretch that's in front of that property. And what they do is rather than collecting $6,000 up front, they charge $2,000 a year for 3 years or $1,000 a year for 6 years. Now, you can negotiate those fees. There is a way to do that. One stream of logic that you could use would be something along the lines of, well, if when something's built on this property, you're going to get more in annual taxes against it, in based on what's put on it for the house, based on the impact fees to build. So, can we get this lowered now so that we can move forward with it? It can work, but remember, you're dealing with the government, so it doesn't often work, right? Because they just don't budge all that often, because you know, eh, basically they'll budge at some point when somebody's just not willing to pay those fees for a number of years. But usually they'll let it ride and ride and ride, and even then, it's not a guarantee. So you could do a couple different things in those cases. If the numbers still make sense, then obviously you can buy it, you could flip it, just don't own it yourself. If the numbers don't make sense based on finding this out, you could renegotiate with the seller to get a better rate based on these things. Or if it just doesn't make sense at all, period. I mean, sometimes these numbers, I'm giving lower numbers, but we've seen paving assessments, up in the $20,000 category, or ones where they tell you you need to finish a road for a certain amount before they allow it, and those are at $10,000 a foot or something ridiculous. In those cases, you could just walk away. I mean, you could contact a neighbor, see if they'd want to buy it or something like that. But generally speaking, it's not good to buy and hold something like that, or just buy it in general. If you want to flip it really quick, if you have an end buyer in place, that's one thing. But if not, if you can't get one, then you're pretty much in that case better off walking away. But again, not something to be too concerned about. It's just something that comes up, something to think about, but don't let it be a huge hindrance because it does not come up that often.